Captain Veltar's 3 hearts hammered against his chest as he stared at the dying lights of the Harmony's Dream. The massive colony ship that had been his home for 20 years was now floating dead in space, its engines cold and its power systems failing one by one. Around him, his crew of peaceful Zephyrians worked frantically at their stations, but everyone knew the truth. They were explorers, not warriors, and they had no way to defend themselves. The bridge grew darker as another system shut down. Through the large viewport that stretched across the front wall, Veltar could see them coming. The Ravager fleet looked like a pack of metal wolves closing in on wounded prey. Their ships were painted black as deep space, covered in sharp edges and weapon ports that glowed with deadly red light. Even from this distance, the alien vessels looked hungry for destruction. "Captain, the main reactor is completely offline," reported his chief engineer, her voice shaking through their telepathic link. "We have maybe 30 minutes of life support left." Veltar closed his eyes and tried to stay calm. The Zephyrians were known throughout their small corner of the galaxy as peaceful beings. They explored new worlds, studied beautiful nebulae, and shared knowledge with anyone willing to listen. They had never built weapons because they believed all problems could be solved with understanding and patience. Now, facing the most violent species in known space, that peaceful nature felt like a death sentence. "Broadcasting emergency signal. On all frequencies," whispered Communications Officer Murdell from her station. Her normally steady telepathic voice was filled with fear that every crew member could feel. The Ravagers were famous for their cruelty. They did not just kill their enemies, they captured entire populations and sold them as slaves across the galaxy. Whole civilizations had chosen to destroy themselves rather than fall into Ravager hands. The alien warships grew larger in the viewport. Veltar could see their weapon systems charging up, preparing to disable what little remained of his ships. Defenses. In desperation, he thought of the small blue planet his science team had discovered during their last exploration mission. It was far away, probably too far for any help to arrive in time, but it was their only hope. "Send our final message toward that world," he ordered. "The one with the single moon. Maybe someone there will hear us." Light years away, on a secret monitoring station, hidden behind Jupiter's swirling clouds, Lieutenant Sujin Park was having a quiet night shift when her screens suddenly lit up with an incoming transmission. Her coffee cup nearly slipped from her hands as she realized what she was seeing: actual alien communication, speaking in mathematical patterns that her computer was already starting to decode. Her fingers moved quickly across her control panel, opening a secure channel to Luna Command. "Admiral Minho Kim, this is Deep Space Station 7. Sir, we have first contact, and they are asking for help." Admiral Minho Kim stood in the deepest level of Luna Command, a place so secret that most of Earth's government did not even know it existed. The massive holographic display in front of him showed 12 deadly shapes scattered throughout the solar system, ships that had been built in the shadows for one terrible purpose. Each vessel was hidden so well that even advanced alien sensors would miss them completely. For 50 long years, humanity had been the galaxy's best-kept secret. While other civilizations traded openly and built peaceful colonies, Earth had chosen a different path. Hidden listening posts throughout the solar system captured every radio signal, every data transmission, every careless communication that passed through nearby space. Slowly, carefully, humanity had learned the galaxy's languages, mapped its trade routes, and studied its many species. What they discovered had terrified them beyond imagination. The Ravagers have enslaved over 200 different species. Minho told Captain Jinwoo Choi, who had just arrived from the hidden military base on the dark side of the moon. Jinwoo commanded the Silent Reaper, the most advanced warship humanity had ever built. Intelligence reports show they are heading for that Zephyrian colony ship right now. We have maybe 6 hours before those peaceful aliens become the next victims. Jinwoo studied the tactical information flowing across his personal datapad. His face remained calm, but his eyes burned with cold anger. He had spent 20 years preparing for this moment, training with weapons that most humans could not even imagine. The Shadow Fleet was not like the exploration vessels that other species built. These were hunter-killers, designed specifically to end predator empires that grew fat on the suffering of innocent civilizations. How long until the Shadow Fleet can deploy? Jinwoo asked, already knowing his ship was ready for immediate launch. 6 hours maximum, Minho replied, then spoke the words that would change galactic history forever. Protocol Omega is now active. All fleet commanders are authorized to use maximum force. The rest of the galaxy believed Earth was just another peaceful world filled with curious explorers and friendly traders. They had no idea that humanity had spent decades building the most dangerous military force the universe had ever seen. While other species focused on commerce and diplomacy, humans had studied war, perfected violence, and prepared for the day when evil would finally meet its match. Deep beneath Earth's oceans and hidden in asteroid fields throughout the solar system, massive shipyards that had operated in complete secrecy for half a century suddenly came alive with activity. Thousands of humans who had dedicated their lives to this moment began final preparations for humanity's first contact with alien civilizations. The Ravagers were about to discover why humans were the only species that had never been successfully conquered by anyone. The Silent Reaper slowly emerged from behind Europa's frozen surface, like a monster rising from the depths of an ocean. Its hull was darker than the space around it, designed to absorb light and radar signals so completely that even advanced alien sensors would struggle to detect it. Captain Jinwoo Choi stood on the bridge, watching his ship's systems come online for the first time in actual combat conditions, all around the solar system. 11 other ships just like his were awakening from their long sleep. These were not exploration vessels or peaceful trading ships. They were nightmares made real. Dreadnoughts that broke every rule of civilized warfare that the galaxy had agreed upon centuries ago. Each ship had been built in secret, using technology that other species considered too dangerous to develop. All vessels report ready for combat operations, announced Commander Hai-Jin Lee from her tactical station. Her voice was steady and professional, but Jinwoo could see the excitement in her eyes. Like every crew member on every ship in the Shadow Fleet, she had trained for this moment her entire adult life. They were not diplomats or scientists. They were warriors trained in the systematic destruction of anyone who dared to prey on innocent civilizations. One by one, the other ships appeared on his main display. The Blood Moon under Captain Taeho Park emerged from the asteroid belt, its red markings barely visible against its black armor. The Ghost Strike, commanded by Captain Ji-Won Song, uncloaked near Saturn's rings, its stealth systems shutting down to reveal weapons that could crack planets. 9 other deadly vessels took their positions in perfect attack formation. Every weapon on every ship had been reverse-engineered from alien technology that humanity had secretly collected over the decades. Crashed vessels, captured pirates, stolen data files. All of it had been studied, improved, and turned into instruments of war that their original creators could never have imagined. The armor plating had been designed specifically to withstand Ravager death rays, built from materials that should not have existed according to galactic science. Target confirmed, Jinwoo announced to his fleet through encrypted channels that no alien could intercept. One peaceful colony ship surrounded by 12 Ravager capital ships. We go in fast, we go in hard, and we leave nothing but wreckage behind us. As all 12 human ships engaged their experimental jump drives simultaneously, space itself seemed to bend and scream around them. The technology they were using was considered impossible by most galactic civilizations, but humanity had never cared much about what others thought was impossible. The Ravagers had no idea that their next victims had just become their executioners. The 12 human ships ripped through hyperspace like bullets fired from the gods themselves. The technology they were using should have taken any civilization at least 500 years to develop. But humanity had always been good at taking shortcuts when innocent lives were at stake. Inside the ships, the crews could feel reality, bending around them as they traveled faster than most species thought possible. On the bridge of the Silent Reaper, the intercepted Ravager communications continued to flood in through their advanced listening equipment. Each message painted a darker picture of an empire that had built its wealth on the bones of countless civilizations. Chief Analyst Yoonji Kim sat at her station, her face growing paler with each report she decoded. Intelligence confirms over 300 slave worlds under direct Ravager control, she reported to Captain Jinwoo, her voice tight with barely controlled anger. Conservative estimates put total casualties in the trillions. Sir, they are not just killing people, they are working entire species to death in mining operations and factory worlds. Jinwoo felt his jaw muscles tighten as he listened to the reports. For 40 years, humanity had been intercepting these communications, learning everything they could about the galaxy's greatest predators. They had studied Ravager ship designs, battle tactics, psychological warfare methods, and expansion patterns. Every detail had been carefully analyzed and used to design countermeasures. The Shadow Fleet was not just a collection of powerful warships, it was humanity's answer to a specific problem. Every weapon system, every armor plate, every tactical program had been created with one goal in mind: the complete elimination of predator species that grew strong by making others suffer. ETA to target location. Ginwoo asked his navigation officer. 30 minutes until we drop out of hyperspace, replied Navigator So-Young Choi, checking her instruments. Sir, long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures at the target coordinates. The Ravagers are not just raiding that colony ship, they are preparing to harvest the Zephyrians for transport to their slave markets. Ginwoo nodded grimly as he thought about those peaceful aliens who had done nothing wrong except send out a cry for help. The Ravagers had spent 1,000 years viewing themselves as the ultimate predators, crushing any species that dared to resist them. They had never encountered a civilization that could match their capacity for violence, had never faced an enemy that understood them better than they understood themselves. Signal all ships in the fleet, Jinwoo ordered, his voice carrying the weight of 50 years of human preparation. No Ravager, survivors, no prisoners, no mercy. The human fleet materialized out of hyperspace, like 12 deadly shadows appearing from another dimension. One moment the space around the Zephyrian colony ship was empty, except for the massive Ravager blockade, and the next moment humanity's deadliest warships were floating among them, like wolves that had somehow appeared inside a flock of sheep. The Ravager vessels were absolutely enormous compared to the human ships. Each alien dreadnought was at least 5 times larger than even the biggest human warship, their hulls covered in weapons that could destroy entire cities. For a brief moment, the size difference made it look like the humans had brought knives to a gunfight. But size meant absolutely nothing when your enemy had spent 50 years studying every detail of your technology, your tactics, and your weaknesses. Target their command centers first, Captain Jinwoo ordered through the encrypted fleet communication system. Remember, we know exactly where their vital systems are located. The Blood Moon fired first, its main weapons launching kinetic impactors that moved at 30% of light speed. The metal slugs hit the nearest Ravager ship's shields and punched through them like a bullet going through wet paper. The alien vessel's defensive systems, which had protected it through dozens of conquests, simply evaporated under the impact. Across the Ravager communication channels, confusion and panic began to spread like wildfire. These newcomers were not behaving like the terrified prey species that the Ravagers were used to hunting. Their ships moved with mechanical precision, each vessel perfectly coordinated with the others in a deadly dance that spoke of decades of careful planning and training. "Their shields are completely down," reported Weapons Officer Hyen-Soo Park from his station aboard the Ghost Strike. Moving to disable life support systems and engine cores, Ravager Admiral Gorthak stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching, in complete horror, as ship after ship in his mighty fleet went dark. Emergency lights flickered across his displays as vessels that had terrorized entire star systems suddenly found themselves helpless. These humans were not just fighting back, they were systematically dismantling his forces with surgical precision, targeting exactly the right systems to cause maximum damage while preventing any ships from escaping to warn others. "How do they know our ship designs so well?" he screamed at his tactical officer, but no answer came. The human weapons seemed to ignore their armor. Their attacks bypassed every defensive system, and their movements predicted every Ravager counterattack before it could even begin. For the first time in over 1,000 years of conquest, the Ravagers tasted genuine fear. What happened next was not really a battle in the traditional sense. It was more like watching a master surgeon at work, except instead of saving lives, the humans were systematically destroying everything the Ravagers had built their reputation on. Earth. Ships moved through space like a pack of wolves that had been hunting together for years, each vessel knowing exactly where the others would be at any given moment. The human coordination was so perfect, it seemed almost supernatural. When the Silent Reaper attacked a Ravager cruiser's left side, the Ghost Strike was already in position to hit its right flank. When Captain Taeho Park's Blood Moon disabled a enemy ship's weapons, Captain So Min-jung's Dark Thunder was ready to take out its engines before it could retreat. Every move flowed into the next, like a deadly dance that had been practiced 1,000 times. "How do they know exactly where our weak points are located?" Admiral Gorthak screamed across his flagship's bridge as another massive dreadnought in his fleet exploded in a ball of superheated plasma. His voice was filled with the kind of panic that his own victims had felt for centuries. "They are hitting systems that should be impossible to target from the outside." The truth was worse than the Ravager Admiral could have imagined. These humans were not fighting with lucky guesses or superior firepower alone. They were attacking like they had complete blueprints of every Ravager vessel ever built. Like they had studied every weakness and memorized every critical system location. Because they had. Captain Ijin Lee, aboard the Phantom Edge, watched her targeting computer lock onto the Ravager flagship's main reactor core with cold satisfaction. 50 years of intercepted communications, secretly captured vessels, and careful long-distance observation had given humanity a complete education in Ravager technology. Every bolt, every wire, every critical component had been mapped and analyzed by human engineers who had dedicated their lives to this moment. "Target the reactor cooling systems first," she ordered her weapons officer. "Then hit the backup power grid." The Ravager flagship shuddered as precisely targeted shots disabled its most vital systems in exactly the right order to cause maximum damage while preventing any chance of self-destruction. "The Zephyrian colony ship is completely secure," reported Captain G1's Song over the fleet communication system. "All Ravager vessels in this sector are either destroyed or permanently disabled." In less than 30 minutes, a fleet that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries had been reduced to floating scrap metal. The human ships had not even taken significant damage. The age of predator empires was ending, and the galaxy's new guardians had announced themselves with fire and steel. The news of the massacres spread through Ravager space like a wildfire burning through dry grass. Emergency transmissions flooded their communication networks as survivors from nearby systems reported the impossible. An entire battle fleet had been completely destroyed in less than 30 minutes by ships from an unknown species that called themselves humans. The reports sounded like the ravings of terrified minds. But the evidence was undeniable. Ships that moved like they could somehow predict every Ravager battle tactic before it happened. Weapons that cut through their supposedly impenetrable shields like they were made of thin air. crews that showed absolutely no mercy to slavers and seemed to take grim satisfaction in the systematic destruction of predator fleets. Most disturbing of all, these humans had appeared from nowhere, struck with devastating precision, and vanished back into space as quietly as they had come. Emperor Zarkith of the Ravager Empire sat in his massive throne room, surrounded by holographic displays, showing the wreckage of Admiral Gorthok's fleet. His scaled hands gripped the armrests of his seat so tightly that his claws left deep scratches in the metal. For over 1,000 years, the Ravagers had been the apex predators of the galaxy, and now some unknown species had humiliated them in front of every civilization that monitored galactic communications. "Convene my war council immediately," he growled to his aide. Within hours, his most trusted generals and intelligence officers had gathered in the Empire's most secure briefing room, their faces showing the same confusion and fear that was spreading through Ravager space. "These humans," Zarkith said, studying the tactical recordings for the 100th time. "Where exactly did they come from? How did we miss an entire military civilization developing this kind of technology?" Intelligence Chief Vorthok, whose usual arrogant confidence had been completely shattered, consulted his data files with shaking hands. "Long-range sensors indicate they originated from a small world called Earth, located in what we classified as a primitive star system. All our previous observations suggested they should be a simple, peaceful civilization with basic technology. The truth was far worse than any of them could have imagined. Humanity had not just advanced rapidly. They had spent half a century preparing specifically for this exact war. Every weapon system, every ship design, every battle tactic had been developed with one single goal in mind: the complete and permanent elimination of predator species that built their empires on the suffering of others. "Mobilize our entire battle," Fleet Zarkith ordered. "If these humans want war, we will give them more destruction than they can possibly handle." He had no idea that humanity's deadliest weapon was not their advanced ships or devastating firepower, it was their patience. The massive hull of the Silent Reaper connected with the Zephyrian colony ship Harmony's Dream with surprising gentleness. After watching the human fleet destroy an entire Ravager battle group in minutes, Captain Veltar had expected these warriors to be cold and mechanical. Instead, the docking procedure was carried out with the careful precision of someone handling delicate artwork. Captain Jinwoo personally crossed through the airlock to meet the alien captain, leaving his weapons behind as a sign of peaceful intentions. The moment he stepped onto the Zephyrian ship, Veltar's telepathic abilities were overwhelmed by something he had never experienced before: the sheer emotional intensity radiating from this human warrior. "Your people, Veltar," whispered directly into Jinwoo's mind, his telepathic voice filled with wonder and confusion. "You burn with righteous anger that reaches deeper than anything I have ever felt. But this fury is not directed toward conquest or personal gain. It exists purely for the protection of those who cannot protect themselves." Jinwoo nodded grimly, understanding that the alien was reading emotions that most humans kept carefully hidden. "We have been monitoring galactic communications for 50 years, he explained in simple terms that the Zephyrian's translation equipment could handle. "We know exactly what the Ravagers have done to hundreds of innocent civilizations. We know what they continue to do every single day. We built our entire fleet for one specific purpose: to end their reign of terror permanently." Through the large viewport of the colony ship, both captains could see something that made Veltar's 3 hearts skip in synchronized amazement. More human ships were arriving by the dozens than by the hundreds. These were not the 12 vessels of the Shadow Fleet that had just annihilated the Ravager blockade. These were entirely different ships emerging from hidden bases throughout human space, each one clearly designed for a specific type of warfare. Admiral Minho Kim's voice crackled over the communication system, reaching every human vessel in the growing fleet. "Phase 2 is now officially authorized," he announced with the weight of 50 years of preparation behind his words. Begin systematic elimination of all Ravager strongholds throughout the galaxy. Leave no slave camp operational, no predator ship intact, no innocent being in chains. Captain Veltar watched in complete awe as humanity revealed its true nature to the galaxy for the first time. These were not conquerors seeking new territory to claim or resources to steal. They were guardians who had spent decades preparing to cross the entire galaxy for the sole purpose of protecting species they had never even met. 6 months had passed since the first human ships had appeared in galactic space, and the entire universe felt different. The mighty Ravager Empire, which had terrorized countless civilizations for over 1,000 years, was now nothing more than a dark chapter in history books. Their massive slave camps had been systematically liberated by human forces, their once fearsome fleets scattered like leaves in a cosmic wind, and their surviving leadership dragged before justice tribunals on the very worlds they had once brutalized. Humanity had kept its promise with the kind of surgical precision that had become their trademark throughout the galaxy. Captain Veltar stood on the observation deck of New Zephyr Station, humanity's first joint colony built in partnership with an alien species. The massive space station orbited a beautiful blue-green world that had been chosen specifically for its peaceful environment and abundant resources. Through the transparent walls, he could see something that would have been impossible just months ago. Zephyrian children playing games with human children, their telepathic laughter mixing with human voices in a symphony of hope that touched his 3 hearts. The sight never failed to amaze him. 2 completely different species, working together, learning from each other, building something beautiful in the darkness of space. The galaxy is changing faster than anyone thought possible, Admiral Minho Kim observed as he joined the alien captain at the viewing window. His weathered face showed the satisfaction of someone who had spent his entire life preparing for a moment that had finally arrived. Other species are reaching out to us almost every day, asking for protection, for guidance in building their own defenses. They have started calling us the Guardians of Terra. Veltar's telepathic voice carried a depth of gratitude that seemed to echo through the station itself. Your response to our SOS did not just save our colony ship, it liberated hundreds of worlds across the galaxy. The predator species that remain now understand there is a price to pay for cruelty, a consequence for those who prey on the innocent. As if the universe itself wanted to emphasize his words, another human patrol fleet departed from the station's docking bays, heading toward the outer rim where reports had come in about pirates threatening peaceful traders. The ships moved with the same deadly grace that had destroyed the Ravager Empire, carrying crews trained to protect those who could not protect themselves. The message was crystal clear to every remaining predator in the galaxy. The age of unchecked aggression was permanently over. Earth's children had come to the stars, not as conquerors seeking glory, but as the galaxy's conscience, and they would continue fighting until every innocent being was safe.